Hey, finance folk, welcome to the EU Finance Podcast. I'm your host, Aidas Palubinskas. Today, we are going to get updated on EU sanctions on Russia. The end of February 2026 marked the beginning of the fifth year of Russia's full-scale illegal invasion of Ukraine. During the past 4 years, Russia has been unable to achieve its illegal war objectives, but has perpetrated countless barbarities, war crimes, and murders against Ukraine and her people. Ukraine is showing remarkable resilience and courage against a brutal invader. In a world of ever greater geopolitical uncertainty, Europe has stepped up its efforts to help Ukraine with financial and military aid, as well as imposing sanctions on the aggressor state, Russia, to curtail its ability to finance the atrocious war against our ally, Ukraine. Ukraine has also stepped up. It's not only successfully defending against Russian aggression, it's taking its hard-won experience on the battlefield and exporting its expertise, especially in air defense. It's exporting it to its allies in Europe, as well as to countries in the Middle East under drone attacks from Iran. Joining us today to give us an update on how sanctions are working is EU Sanctions Envoy David O'Sullivan. Mr. O'Sullivan is making his third appearance on the EU Finance Podcast, and the previous two episodes are certainly worth listening to, so we'll put the links to them in the show notes. Okay, let's get up to date. Mr. O'Sullivan, welcome to the podcast.
Nice to be back. Thank you.
I really appreciate I think this is your third appearance on our podcast.
Indeed.
And I know that you're a very, very, very busy man, and so let's bust right into it.
Okay.
Okay, first question. You've created a very apt metaphor for sanctions, which is that it's like a tire puncture, not a tire blowout. Could you give our audience a quick explanation by what you mean by that metaphor?
Well, I mean, it is not something which has an immediate and obvious impact like a blowout where the car basically swerves off the road and crashes. But it's a slow puncture, which means that as the car moves along, slowly the air exits until at a certain moment the tire is completely flat and then it becomes impossible to drive. So that's the analogy. It's imperfect, of course, but it indicates the slow drip effect of sanctions over a period of time rather than an immediate impact at one point in time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so after 4 years of sanctions, is that Russian Lada, that Russian car, slowing down, or is Russia's war economy just getting better at driving on a flat?
I think all the signs point to the fact that the car is slowing down and on the verge of stopping. Of course, it's easy to say that, and people are still dying, and there were some horrendous attacks just in the last day or two, the renewed targeting of civilians. So I don't want to minimize that. I don't want to make it sound as though I'm unaware of the fact that the war is still continuing. But I think all the signs are that all the key indicators in the Russian economy are flashing red, whether that is the public finances, whether that is the activity of the civilian economy as opposed to the war economy. Even the war economy is running into difficulties. The financial sector is in a lot of trouble. I mean, I think a lot of banks are sitting on very bad paper, loans they were forced to give to companies who are incapable of paying back. The oil exports have been hit by the fall in oil prices before the conflict in the Gulf. And while the conflict in the Gulf has undoubtedly, and the consequent rise in prices has undoubtedly given some injection of capital back in, the fact remains that the damage the Ukrainians have done in the attacks on the refineries and on the loading terminals means that Russia is badly placed at this point to profit from the increase in oil prices. So I think, all the evidence, if you look at the Russian newspapers, of course, which I read fluently, of course I don't, but there is a very good correspondent in Moscow, the Sean Rosenberg, the BBC correspondent, who regularly does a review of Russian papers, and he's a fluent Russian speaker, and the Russian newspapers themselves are admitting the economy is slowing down, the public finances are in trouble, the economy is not performing well, and there are people who say that a point of collapse is very close. I would be very, very hesitant to be sure of that now, but I'm absolutely certain that the situation is becoming more and more unsustainable.
I was just reading just today that Putin has signed a new decree where if that somebody signs up to go into the army and go to the meat grinder at the front, that the banks will have to forgive their loans, which is going to put even more pressure on the banks that are already having difficulties with the corporates. But okay, let's come back to sanctions as such. We recently pushed the 20th sanctions package over the line. What's new in that package?
Well, I mean, I don't know how much is new. It's very much, in the continuum of what we've been doing. So we have energy sector listings. We have additional vessels of the Shadow Fleet sanctioned. We've put dispositions in on tanker sales, inserting safeguards on tanker sales from the EU to prevent the Russians getting hold of them. We've had a port infrastructure ban on 2 Russian ports. We've had a ban on LNG terminal services. We've done quite a lot on Russian banks, including other third country financial operators, notably Kyrgyzstan, where we've detected a lot of nasty financial stuff, particularly crypto. We've also listed a transaction ban on banks in Laos and Azerbaijan. We've also done some trade measures, which is new export bans on Russian goods, new export restrictions on items. We've added items to the dual-use list, and we've had other listings. So it's very much along the lines of what we've been doing. But of course, we have activated the anti-circumvention tool for the first time against Kyrgyzstan in this case. And so I think it shows that we're continuing to turn the screw.
Okay, let's come back to what you just mentioned, the anti-circumvention tool. This is the first time that the EU has activated this tool, and you've spent a lot of time, many years now, on sanctions diplomacy with Russia's neighbors. So with that sanctions tool, the way that I understand it, the tool can be used to encourage countries or entities that are helping Russia and help them to do the right thing, which is to stop helping Russia kill Ukrainian civilians. Is 2026 the year that we really start using it?
Look, I think the fact that it has been there has been helpful in the discussions with many countries. We have triggered it in this case with Kyrgyzstan because, unlike the situation in other countries in Central Asia, we did not get satisfactory guarantees about stopping the throughput of EU origin common high priority list goods, battlefield goods, through Kyrgyzstan to Russia. And in particular, we had noticed spectacular increases in 2 products, radio products and CNC machines. And we decided to ban the export of these goods to Kyrgyzstan until such time as we see put in place a really solid system, making sure that any goods going to Kyrgyzstan cannot be transshipped onto Russia. Whether, we increase the use of it, I think really depends on the quality of our dialogue with our partners. And we always prefer to reach agreed solutions where they take some ownership of the issue in terms of stopping the transshipment. And I hope that we can continue to proceed in that way with the majority of our partners. The fact that we have used it in one instant does show that we can use it if all else fails.
Understood. Now, many entities located in third countries are helping Russia circumvent our sanctions and contribute to fueling the Russian war machine. Beyond the anti-circumvention tool, what are the other tools that are available to you, to the EU, to fight circumvention, and are those tools working? Well,
I mean, this is also a thorny question for me, because I think we can say that we've had a measure of success. But equally, components turn up every day in weapons being used many times against civilians in Ukraine. So we cannot be complacent. But I think we have succeeded in making it much harder for Russia to get these components, much slower. The supply chains have become increasingly complex because they can't just have someone in one country buy it from Europe and then ship it to Russia. They have to invent increasingly complex schemes of buying it in Europe, sending it to one country, then to another, then to another. And of course, the net result is to increase the price substantially. So we estimate that the Russians are paying perhaps 600% more for these goods than they were before. And if you look at the sort of the linear progression of Russia's purchase of these items, it's more or less the same as it has been since the beginning of the war. Yet they are using much more of these goods. So I think this shows that, they are not able to get them in the quantities they would like. One of the main tools has been the Annex 4, the listings, the transaction ban. But mainly we have persuaded in getting these countries to accept that they don't want to be part of a trade which ends up in weapons. And so we have got the countries themselves taking measures to prevent transshipment.
I was just listening to a podcast today where it was mentioned that, they referred to it as a game of whack-a-mole, where when one entity is exporting something to Russia or helping Russia circumvent the ban, and we find them, shut them down, list them or whatever, that another one springs up. And that a German journalism investigation discovered an EU company that was essentially being controlled by Russians from Moscow, but pretending to be an EU company. Now, some people would say, well, then sanctions are failing. But it's quite the opposite, isn't it? Because if we discovered them, if they've been discovered, then that means that sanctions enforcement can move forward. Of course, is it a whack-a-mole game? Are we falling behind? Or
well, it's funny you mentioned this dreaded phrase whack-a-mole, because I've never played whack-a-mole, right? I'm told next time I go to America, someone told me that there's an arcade just outside Washington, which it's some kind of arcade game.
Yes.
Where you hit innocent, fluffy animals on the head, and when you hit the first one, another one pops up. So I kind of get the idea, but I've never seen this game played. I really have to do that at some point.
They don't make them anymore because obviously it's pretty disturbing to be hitting animals on the head.
Innocent animals on the head, yeah. I prefer to use the phrase cat and mouse. It's very much a chasing game. And I think it's true. I always say to the colleagues, there are thousands of people, literally thousands of people in St. Petersburg and Moscow who get out of bed every morning and go to the office with only one ambition, that is to circumvent our sanctions. So we have to get out of bed every morning with the same determination and come to the office to stop them from circumventing. And that is literally the game we're playing, except it's not a game because people are dying. But that is what is happening. Every time we put something in place to tighten the sanctions, somebody will come up with a way of getting around it. Then we find that and we close that loophole and so on. So I think there is an element of cat and mouse and a never-ending story. And I don't think it ever will, as long as this dreadful war continues. I think the need to do this and play this game will continue. The question is, who is having the more success? And I would argue, marginally, we are having more success.
I agree. Okay, let's talk about Russia's shadow fleet. Now, Russia has built this massive fleet of old, decrepit tankers that probably no one would insure anymore to transport their oil that we have, of course, sanctioned. Is there any way for us to, I want to say sink this parallel economy, but I'm not talking about sinking the ships. I'm talking about sinking that parallel economy of the ghost fleet. Is it possible for us to achieve that, or?
Yeah, I think we have made a lot of progress in hampering the work of this shadow fleet. Firstly, we have collectively with the US and the UK sanctioned about 650 of these vessels. Now, what does that mean when we sanction a vessel? It means that vessel cannot receive any services in ports of the sanctioning entities, so US, UK, EU. And we estimate that these ships basically are able to ship 75% less as a result of being sanctioned than was the case before. So this has been quite successful. We have worked with flag states, the people who give flags to these ships, to get them to agree not to give their flag to sanctioned vessels. And we have also worked to get these ships denied entry to ports, including of third countries. Now, what is the argument we use? It is we work with the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, and we point out that even if you don't like our sanctions or you don't want to implement our sanctions, these vessels are dangerous because they are substandard shipping. They are, as you say, very old, probably badly maintained. Their crews are probably very badly trained. And the question is the insurance even worth the paper it's written on? And we've also worked with more transparency about the insurance, that these ships now have to reveal what is the nature of their insurance so that countries through whose waters it passes, can see is this a valid insurance, and is there going to be money there to cover any accidents which might happen. So we have been putting continuous pressure on the shadow fleet, and I think this is reflected in Russia's increasing difficulty in shipping their oil and getting it out of the country.
Okay, you mentioned that they can't go into European ports to get services. Now, I'm going to ask a question that might be a little provocative because I know you generally don't want to comment on things forward. But there's been reports in the media that the 21st sanctions package is already being worked on, and that there's something called the full maritime services ban in that. Would you care to comment?
Well, it's actually in the 20th package. I mean, we actually announced our intention to put in place a maritime services ban, but we said we would do so in conjunction with the G7. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, with everything that's been happening in the Gulf and all the disruption of LNG and oil shipping and the huge spike in prices, this has put people in a difficult position about, anything to do with energy these days is very sensitive because we've already seen huge increases in prices. So for the time being, people don't want to talk about that kind of measure, but it is there in principle in the 20th package. And I think as soon as the situation in the Gulf calms down a bit and the energy market, particularly the oil market, stabilizes a bit, I think we will try to come back to it, because I think it would be the logical next step in terms of dealing with the shadow fleet.
Got it. Okay, this is, like I said, I know you're very busy, so this is going to be my last question. Russia has made little or no progress in its attacks now, while Ukraine seems to be getting the upper hand. It's been liberating more territory than it loses in the near past. Ukraine's clearly surpassing Russia in the use of battlefield drones. Russia's war economy, let's hope, is on its last legs, and everything that I read is pointing in that direction. What would you, as somebody who knows more about this than probably anybody else, what would your answer be to those people that are genuinely skeptical about the effect, the impact of sanctions? Now, I know there's an awful lot of Russian disinformation being pushed constantly to take away our confidence, European confidence, that we're on the right track, that we're doing the right thing, that it is indeed effective. How would you respond either to both, to the disinformation, but also to the people that have been led astray by that disinformation?
Well, I go back to what I think I said earlier in our discussion. I mean, you just look at the objective facts of the Russian economy, and everyone reaches the same conclusion. It's in deep trouble. and the cannibalization of the civilian economy in order to feed the war economy is reaching the outer limits of its sustainability. And so I think the Russian economy is in deep, deep trouble. And at the same time, I agree that the news from the front does appear to indicate that the Ukrainians are starting to claw back some of the initiative and to indeed take back some of the territory which they were losing incrementally for the last few months. They have shown remarkable resilience and ingenuity and courage, frankly. And we should never forget, as we talk about all of this, it's not an abstract thing for the people living in Ukraine. Either you have a loved one at the front, in the front line, and serving in the military, or you are, yourself rushing to the bomb shelter, or you've lost someone in the brutal attacks that are continuing. So this is not a test. This is a live war. And I'm very cautious in saying, well, I think it's going to end soon. But it was very interesting, I think, that Mr. Putin recently in one of his speeches actually sort of said this war might end quite soon. So I think there is a lot of discussion within Russia on, what is happening, whether it's sustainable, can they continue? But I wouldn't like to predict an end anytime soon. But I do think that on both fronts, the military front, where I think Ukraine has once again regained some of the initiative, including what they like to call kinetic sanctions, in other words, the attacks they make on Russian infrastructure.
Russian military and Russian oil infrastructure,
yes,
not on civilian. Just wanted to,
I
want to make that very clear for our listeners.
Russian energy infrastructure is what I meant to say.
Yeah.
The sanctions side on the economy, I think the news is generally pretty bleak for Russia at the moment. Now, what conclusion Mr. Putin will draw from that, I wouldn't like to predict with great certainty, but things are not going well.
Yeah, they're definitely not going well for Russia. And Ukraine has gotten to the point where it's not only helping countries in the Middle East expand their anti-drone and their air defense technology, but Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia just yesterday and today have invited Ukrainian air defense experts to help them out because the Russians have been pushing drones out of Belarusian airspace into the Baltics and having them land there.
Yeah, and we have seen, the conflict in the Gulf is not at all helpful to any of us. But one of the byproducts is that people are seeing the interconnection between Iran and Russia, the fact that they are mutually supportive, the Russians giving intelligence and other aid to Iran, and the Iranians supplying drones and other elements to the Russians. And I think some of the countries that were wanting to keep a bit of distance from the Russia-Ukraine war are now taking a slightly different view, particularly in the Gulf states who've been experiencing some of the attacks that the Ukrainians have been making. So I think this is also unhelpful from a Russian perspective.
Excellency, as always, it's fascinating to talk to you, and I really, really appreciate you coming to the pod and spending this time with me. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Okay, here's my take on this. Sanctions against Russia are working. They're not a silver bullet, but they do serve to lessen Russia's ability to finance its war machine. Sanctions alone aren't going to defeat the Russian threat to all of Europe, but they are indeed an effective tool to lessen Russia's ability to wage war against us. Sanctions are hard. Bad actors are always looking for ways around them through evasion, circumvention, criminal networks, and shady financial dealings. The EU is hard at work plugging loopholes, refining sanctions, working with allies and neighbors to tighten them up and make them even more effective. I like the metaphor of sanctions being like a punctured tire. It doesn't create a sudden explosion, but rather gradually and consistently lets the air out of the tire until the car becomes impossible to drive. That's what sanctions do to the Russian war economy, and it's working. Russian sovereign wealth fund is closer to depletion. Its revenues from the EU buying energy are way down, and its war economy is teetering. Sanctions are working. What's most important is that they're helping Ukraine to victory. That's all for today. Thanks for being with me. It's appreciated. You'll find links to more information in the show notes. Do please spread the word about the podcast. Tell your friends and family. Like and subscribe. Until next time, bye.